Falklands Islands are an archipelago in South America, located about 500 km from the Argentine coast. As for its discovery, it isn't entirely clear. Some claim that the Falklands Islands were sighted by members of Magellan's crew in the service of the King of Spain around the 1920s. On the contrary, in England it was held that John Davis was the one who discovered them in 1592. Although this was recognized as false years later, even by some British, because the islands already appeared before on Spanish maps. There was also talk of its sighting by the Dutch. Despite not knowing exactly who saw and documented them first, the English wanted to get ahead of the rest and took control of the islands. The British in 1690 made an expedition under the command of John Strong. They landed in the area and named the strait that separates the two main islands, calling it Falkland Sound, San Carlos Strait in Spanish, after the Viscount who had financed the trip. However, the French were the first to make a stable settlement on the islands, called Port St. Louis in 1764, under the command of Bougainville. The possession was carried out by sailors from Saint Malo, from where the name Malines comes, which in Spanish would be Malvinas. However, Spain claimed the Falklands as its own from France in 1767, claiming they were an extension of the Spanish Empire. In this country recognized the sovereignty of Spain in the archipelago and gave in to return control to it, after giving compensation to Bougainville, which had founded a new colony. But on the other hand, Great Britain wasn't going to stand still and secretly created a settlement in 1765, called Port Egmont. Therefore, in 1770, a war was about to break out between Great Britain and Spain. Finally, 4 years later, the British ended up leaving. From 1810, the emancipation of Hispanic America entered its initial phase. The Spanish colonies were divided into different states, and one of them was Argentina, which in 1816 declared its independence and claimed the Malvinas as its own, like the rest of the territory of the former Viceroyalty of the Rio de la Plata. Thus, in 1820, the government of the province of Buenos Aires sent a frigate to the islands and took possession of them. But the British appeared again. In 1833, the British Empire took possession of the Falklands Islands under the command of Captain John James Onslow. They expelled the Argentines, and the Falklands came under the British flag again. The Argentines didn't stop claiming those islands as their own. The dispute between the British and the Argentines was having great relevance, and the UN asked them to settle that confrontation in a friendly way. Then, the British Crown was willing to return possessions if the islanders wanted it. However, the inhabitants of the Falklands wanted to continue with the British Kingdom. The coup in Argentina in 1976 would be a new important moment. The military meeting began a process of national reorganization. The new government didn't have the support of the Argentines because they were criticized for economic mismanagement and human rights abuses. So, led by Leopoldo Fortunato Galtieri, they wanted to divert attention from their policies towards the Falklands Islands. And he set out to get them back. In this way, they wanted the Argentine people to unite and support the current government. The military meeting ordered the invasion of the Falklands, South Georgia, and the South Sandwich Islands. And on April 2, 1982, the Argentine armed forces landed in Port Stanley and ousted the British government. Immediately, the Argentine military group announced the recovery of the islands. But British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, nicknamed the Iron Lady, wasn't going to allow it. And it was there that the so-called Falklands War began. While the NATO countries, such as the United States and Chile, its neighboring countries, supported the United Kingdom, the Argentine government received the support of some Latin American countries such as Peru or Panama. Despite the hopes of the Argentines, the British maintained military superiority. And finally, after hard battles, on June 14, 1982, the British armed forces had reached the vicinity of Port Stanley and the Argentines surrendered. The defeat dealt the final blow to the military regime. Elections were called and they achieved the end of the dictatorship and the recovery of democracy. Currently, more than 3,000 people live in the Falklands Islands. Its inhabitants were once again given the opportunity to decide in 2 referendums if they wanted to continue under British administration. because Argentina continues to claim the return of sovereignty. In both the 1986 and 2013 referendums, the option to continue belonging to the United Kingdom won with a majority. Did you know this part of the story, TikTakers? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, and if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode!